chosen one. You will live what God has already released for this night, but you are before this promise. It is no coincidence that you have come this far. It is no accident that your eyes have rested upon this message. There is something written in heaven with your name on it, and only those who can endure the weight and remain firm in the silence of God can hear the call that is echoing now. You need to understand, not all of humanity will have access to what is being released. Only a small part, a faithful remnant, will hear the voice that breaks through the darkness and will rise as a response to the divine call. Many will pass by unnoticed, but those who persevered, those who did not let go of God's hand when all seemed lost, these are the ones who will be marked with the promise. The spiritual clock has reset. It's not tomorrow. It's not next week. It's not some indefinite future time. It is now. Heaven does not mark the hours as men do, but when God's clock rings, nothing can delay the fulfillment of what he has determined. This night carries a prophetic weight. This night brings a harvest that can only be received by those with firm hands, vigilant eyes, and a ready heart. And perhaps you remember how many times you prayed without an answer, how many nights you cried in silence, how many doors were closed before you. Do you remember the days when you believed you were alone? The moments when the silence of God sounded like abandonment? Well, it was in that very silence that he forged you. It was in that apparent void that he was molding your spirit to carry what is now arriving. Every tear, every weight, every locked door was, in reality, preparation. While you thought you were forgotten, heaven was architecting the weight of the glory that is now about to be poured out. You did not go through what you went through in vain. You did not face what you faced without purpose. Everything was sculpted with a hammer and chisel to mold in you the image of the chosen one who rises at the appointed time. Now, you stand before doors that can no longer remain closed. You are before promises that can no longer be postponed. What is coming is not small, not common, not something that can be measured by the standards of this world. It is spiritual abundance. It is eternal inheritance. It is heavenly responsibility. It is a legacy that goes beyond you, and this is the invitation. Remain until the end. Do not let go of this word halfway through. Do not treat this message as just another one. Every phrase is a key that opens a door. Every revelation is a seal that is broken. Every image is a map that leads you to the destiny that heaven has already written. It doesn't matter how you got here, tired, confused, wounded, or in silence. What matters is that you arrived. And because you have arrived, there is something to be released. This is not just a word of encouragement. It is a decree, it is a call, it is an awakening. Prepare yourself. What is about to be said is not common information. It is spiritual food. It is not just encouragement. It is a summons. You were called to listen, to absorb, to carry. And when you are done, you will not be the same. You need to understand the difficulties you went through were not punishments, were not penalties thrown at your life as if God took pleasure in your pain. On the contrary, every struggle was a training field. Every tear was watered on the land of the promise. Every silence was a lesson in resistance. Everything that seemed to be collapsing on you was not to destroy you, but to mold you. Look at the story of Joseph. He was just a young man with dreams, but the pit became his school, the prison became his process, and the rejection of his brothers became the ladder to the throne. Joseph would not have been able to bear the weight of governing a nation if he had not first experienced the weight of rejection and loneliness. The pit was not the end. It was the beginning. The prison was not ruin. It was preparation. God was carving every detail, forging character, and building a man who would be able to handle abundance without getting lost in it. Similarly, everything you have faced was part of that same process. The delays, the disappointments, the no's that broke your heart were not signs of abandonment. They were tools from heaven. The hammer and chisel that strike the stone are not destroying the stone, but revealing the sculpture hidden within it. So it was with your life. God did not break you, he built you. How many times did you think you wouldn't be able to endure? How many times did you believe the weight was too great? But still you remained. Still, your faith was not torn away. Even with tears, you held on tight. This proves that the trial did not kill you, it revealed you. You discovered a strength you didn't know you had. You found a faith that seemed small, but became unshakable in the process. The trial is the fire where gold is purified. And if you were cast into the fire, it is because there was gold in you. Clay is not put in the furnace, but gold is. Gold needs fire to shine, and it was in this fire that God refined you. With every battle, He was not just testing your endurance, but your identity. What you carry is so precious that it needed to be forged, so it wouldn't break on the day of abundance. Joseph was sold, betrayed, forgotten, but each stage was a step. From the cistern to the palace, there was an invisible line guided by the hand of God. And you, too, have walked this invisible path. What seemed like injustice was actually alignment. What seemed like a delay was the perfect route to put you in the exact position God prepared. And if you look back today, you realize you survived what many would not have endured. You went through what was meant to destroy you and came out stronger. This is not a coincidence, it is evidence. Evidence that there is a greater calling on your life, that you are set apart to carry something that is not common. Understand this once and for all. The marks of your pain are not scars of failure. They are spiritual medals of victory. Every trial you faced is a seal that you were being trained for this moment. It's not about chance, it's about a plan. And if the plan required you to cross valleys, it was because the mountain was too high to be reached without preparation. Now, when the promise manifests, you are no longer the one who started in the pit. You are no longer the same one who cried without answers. You carry a spiritual maturity, an emotional resilience, a muscle of faith that only those who have been through the forge can possess. Therefore, do not see your pain as loss. See it as evidence. Evidence that heaven has chosen you. Evidence that your journey was not in vain. Evidence that you endured the training and can now endure the destiny. Think about this and absorb it. The trial was not your ruin. It was your graduation. Every blow was a lesson. Every night in tears was a preparation. Every silence was a disguised answer. And now, everything that seemed like disorder reveals itself as a divine strategy. Take a deep breath. Let this truth enter your spirit. You were not defeated by the trial, you were forged by it. Everything you went through was not in vain. If the trial forged you, it is because there was a promise waiting for the right time to manifest. God does not allow someone to walk through such deep valleys unless there is an inheritance prepared on the other side. And this inheritance is not just gold. It is not just wealth. It is not just numbers or material prosperity. It is spiritual abundance. It is eternal legacy. It is a mission that surpasses your own life. Look at Esther, a young woman who grew up in obscurity, without position, without title, without privileges. But when the appointed time came, God placed her before the throne, not so that she would enjoy the crown alone, but so that she would save an entire nation. The promise was not just about Esther, it was about the people. Likewise, the promise about you is not just about what you will conquer, but about those who will be reached through your life. God never gives abundance as a toy, but as a responsibility. When He entrusts more, it is because He expects more. The billions that many think of only as the riches of this world are in fact the symbol of a grandiose spiritual inheritance laden with purpose. You are not just called to accumulate, but to share. Not just a receiver, but a transmitter. You are called to be a channel of what comes from above. This promise that rests upon you was not built in a day. It was stitched together with every tear you shed, in every prayer that rose like incense before God. It was recorded in heaven while you walked without seeing anything happening on earth. Every minute of waiting was not a delay, it was preparation. And now, at the exact time, this promise becomes visible. The legacy that God places in your hands is not small. It is something that carries weight, that carries a name, that carries eternity. It is a legacy that carries the seal of Christ himself. Therefore, you need to understand, when this abundance arrives, it doesn't just arrive as a gift, but as a mission. You were set apart, you were marked, you were counted among those who are part of the 1%. Few remain until the end, few endure the wait, few hold firm in the face of silence. But you did not give up. You remained when everything screamed for you to let go. That is why you are now before the promise. God's clock pointed to the exact moment, and this moment is now. The inheritance that is arriving is not just for you to live better, but for the kingdom of God to be expanded. It is for families to be touched, communities to be transformed, generations to be marked. The legacy doesn't end in you. It begins in you. You are the bearer of what heaven has released, but you are not the final destination. You are the channel, the conductor, the messenger. When Esther stood before the king, she knew her position was not a privilege, it was a purpose. You also need to understand, the position God is giving you is not just for your personal satisfaction. It is for the mission he entrusted to you. What is in your hands is greater than your dreams, greater than your desires, greater than your own life. And if you are hearing this word, it is because this promise is already active in your direction. It is not something distant, it is not something unlikely. It is before you, ready to be manifested. Your faithfulness in the process set you apart from the rest. Your resistance in the face of trials placed you in a place of honor. You are part of the small group that is called the 1%. This promise is a seal that carries both abundance and responsibility. And whoever receives it is never the same again. If this message is touching your heart, imagine starting each morning with an intimate conversation with Jesus. The Coffee with Jesus ebook was created for this. 31 days of encounters with the Word, deep prayers, challenges of faith, and revelations that transform your day. It's not just a book, it's a daily invitation to sit at the table with the one who knows your heart. And you also get 2 super bonuses completely free. But be aware, limited edition. The link to get yours is in the first pinned comment. Don't put it off. Jesus is already waiting for you. If there is a promise on your life, it is inevitable that the enemy will try to rise up. He doesn't fight against those who are empty, but against those who carry something precious. If you have been the target of attacks, delays, and lies, it is not because you were outside the plan, but precisely because you were inside the purpose. The enemy fears what you carry, and that is why he tried to stop what God has determined. Remember David before Goliath. To human eyes, there was no logic. A young shepherd boy without armor against a giant, experienced in battles. But what seemed like a disadvantage was proof that the enemy always overestimates his weapons and underestimates those who carry the presence of God. David did not win because he was bigger, but because his trust was in the Lord. The giant fell, and the victory became evidence that the enemy never has the last word. Also, look at the story of Job. He lost everything in a short time: family, possessions, health. To human eyes, it was the end. But in the spiritual world, every trial was a stage. Satan believed that Job would abandon his faith, but the opposite happened. The more intense the attack, the deeper the testimony. And in the end, Job received double what he had lost. So it was with you. How many times did you notice doors suddenly closing, promises being delayed, people rising against you for no reason? How many times did you feel opposing forces trying to suffocate your faith? Well, know this: every opposition was a confirmation that you were on the right path. The enemy does not waste weapons against those who pose no threat. If you have faced attacks, it is because your life is living proof that there is a greater promise. The Word confirms this truth. Isaiah 54:17 declares, "No weapon forged against you will prevail, and you will refute every tongue that accuses you." This does not mean that weapons would not be forged, but rather that none of them would prevail. They would be launched, but they would have no power to destroy what God has determined. Every lie thrown against you was an attempt to shake your identity. Every delay was a trap to steal your hope. Every pain was an attack to make you believe you were alone. But none of this won. You remained standing, even though tired, even though marked, even though full of scars. These scars are not signs of defeat, but spiritual trophies of victory. Today, looking back, you realize that all the attacks could not prevent what God had already written. None of them had the strength to cancel the decree that was released over your life. The enemy tried but did not win. He roared like a lion, but the true Lion of the tribe of Judah was always by your side. If the enemy couldn't stop you in the desert, much less will he be able to stop you from entering the promised land. Every battle only served to increase your spiritual authority. Now you not only carry the promise, but also the experience of one who knows what it is to win in the midst of wars. And today you can declare, I went through the fire, but I was not consumed. I walked through the waters, but I did not drown. I faced giants, but none of them prevailed. This is not just a story, it is a testimony. You need to understand, there are times when heaven opens up and nothing can be delayed anymore. This is the time you are in. It is not a distant projection. It is not a promise that drags on indefinitely. It is now. God's clock does not work like men's, but it is never late, it never fails, it never loses its rhythm. What seemed to be taking a long time was actually being aligned. Ecclesiastes 3:1 declares, there is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. If there is a time to plant and a time to harvest, then know this, you have already crossed the season of waiting. And now heaven is announcing the season of harvest. What was germinating in silence now blossoms in plain sight. How many times did you think God had forgotten? How many times did you believe the promise was too distant to be fulfilled? But today the Spirit reminds you, every second of silence was a thread woven into the invisible tapestry of God. The time of the promise was not yesterday. It is not tomorrow, it is today. Look at the biblical stories. Abraham waited, but when the time came, the son was born. Israel wandered in the desert, but when the Jordan parted, the promised land was revealed. Simeon waited for years, but when he entered the temple, he saw salvation in Mary's arms. The divine clock is never late, and so it is with you. Heaven moved invisible pieces, displaced people, closed doors that were not for you, opened paths that no one else could open. While you believed that nothing was happening, God was writing the backstage of your story. He was aligning the setting, preparing hearts, organizing resources, moving circumstances. Now everything converges to a single point. This is your time. Don't wait for more perfection to begin. Don't wait for everything to be adjusted to act. The harvest is not promised for an indefinite future, but for the present. The step of faith needs to be taken now. God did not call you to live on distant expectations, but on immediate movements. When he says, it is now, there is no argument that justifies remaining still. The waiting was not a loss, it was a preparation. The delay was not a setback, it was an alignment. What seemed like stagnation was just God's clock, adjusting the exact moment when everything would be released. Now you are ready to live what seemed impossible. And more, this moment is not just about receiving, but about positioning yourself. When heaven releases something, the earth needs to respond. Your faith is the key that activates what has already been released. The time is now, but your response needs to accompany that time. Do not allow the opportunity to pass by without you grabbing it with both hands. Remember, the enemy tried to delay, tried to steal, tried to distract. But if the promise has come this far, it is because no force of darkness was able to stop it. So don't let doubt or fear stop you now. Walk by faith even if your feet tremble. Declare with your life that you believe, that you receive, that you position yourself. Today is a night of turning. Today is a night of fulfillment. Today is a night when the harvest begins to be seen. And those who saw you cry in silence will also see your victory in public. The moment is now. When God pours abundance on someone, it is not to inflate the ego, but to expand the kingdom. The promise that comes to you is not vanity, not purposeless luxury, not a passing whim. It is a mission. It is a responsibility. The prosperity that God delivers is always accompanied by a deeper calling, to serve, to bless, to transform. Look at the example of Solomon. When he took the throne, he could have asked for riches, military victories, or fame. But his prayer was different. He asked for wisdom to govern. And because he sought first what pleased God, he received not only wisdom, but also wealth and honor like no one before him had. Abundance was not given as an ornament, but as a tool to govern with justice. So it is with you. If God entrusts resources into your hands, it is because he knows you can use them as a tool for transformation. He did not choose you to be just a recipient, but to be a channel. Not just a receiver, but a transmitter. The abundance that arrives is to feed, sustain, build up, and uplift. It is for families to be restored, communities to be reached, generations to be touched. The responsibility is clear. What you received does not end in you. The flow from heaven needs to continue. When manna fell in the desert, each person received enough for the day, but no one could keep more than the measure, because the blessing would spoil. This teaches us that God's provision is alive, dynamic, always in motion. When he places a lot in your hands, it is because many depend on you to be blessed through that lot. And here is the secret. The more you become a channel, the more God entrusts. The more you share, the more he expands. The more you bless, the more he pours out. Because heaven does not seek accumulators, it seeks distributors. It seeks those who understand that inheritance is a mission, not a toy. This responsibility should not be seen as a burden, but as an honor. The Lord could choose anyone, but he chose you. He could place resources in selfish hands, but he decided to trust you because he knows you. Because he knows that your heart does not bow to vanity. You went through the forge precisely so you could bear this responsibility without being corrupted. Imagine the impact. Schools being raised, families being rescued, ministries being sustained, entire communities being transformed. Imagine the name of God being exalted because you understood that what you received was not just for yourself, but for all those around you. This is the legacy. This is the calling. And remember, Jesus multiplied loaves and fish because there was a hungry crowd. Multiplication never happens without a need. If there is multiplication in your life, it is because there are multitudes waiting to be fed through what you carry. Therefore, do not reduce this promise to something small. Do not turn the calling into ego. Do not use what God has given you for vanity, but for a mission. Responsibility is the seal that differentiates those who only receive from those who truly belong to the kingdom. You are not just someone who was blessed. You are someone called to become a blessing. You are not just an heir, you are an ambassador. You are not just chosen, you are sent. The inheritance that arrives carries with it the summons to assume your role in the greater plan. And here is the question: what will you do with what God has placed in your hands? This answer will define the reach of your legacy. Not everyone can endure the process. Not everyone remains firm when the silence stretches, when doors close, when the enemy rises. Many start, few finish. Many listen, few respond. And that is exactly what marks the remnant, the ability to remain even when nothing makes sense. This is the prophetic seal of the 1%. It is not about exclusivity based on favoritism, but on faithfulness. God does not choose at random. He responds to perseverance, to the heart that does not give up, to the faith that insists. The 1% are those who, in the midst of the desert, do not let go of the promise. They are those who, in the face of pain, do not abandon the altar. They are those who, even without seeing, continue to believe. Think of Gideon. He started with an army of 32,000 men, but in the divine sifting process, only 300 remained. To human eyes, it was madness. But in God's eyes, it was strategy. It was not about quantity, but about quality. It was not about a crowd, but about a remnant. And with only 300, the enemy was defeated. So it is today. God does not need many. He needs a few who remain faithful. You need to understand, being here, hearing this word, is not a coincidence. It is a sign that you are part of this group. If you have reached this point, it is because you carry the mark of perseverance. The enemy tried, but did not win. The pain tried to silence, but failed. The silence tried to push you away, but you remained. This is evidence that there is a seal on your life. This seal is not visible to human eyes, but it is recognized in the spiritual world. It sets you apart. It distinguishes you. It places you in the position of an heir to something that many desired, but few achieved. It is not merit, it is grace. It is not pride, it is a mission. You have been marked as part of this 1% that carries the divine inheritance. And why so few? Because few are willing to pay the price. The process is not endured by just anyone, but you endured it. You went through the waters, walked through the fire, faced giants, resisted time. And now this resistance translates into honor. The prophetic seal of the 1% is the calling to live not just for oneself, but for the kingdom. It is to be a channel of abundance, a living witness of God's power, an answer for a world that cries out. You are not just someone who survived, you are someone who has been set apart. Therefore, this is the invitation. Publicly declare your covenant. Make visible what heaven already recognizes. In the comments, write 777. This number is not superstition. It is a symbol. It represents God's completeness, perfection, the confirmation that you are positioning yourself as part of the remnant. By declaring this, you are not just writing a number. You are affirming your faith. You are sealing in the natural what is already established in the spiritual. This seal does not place you above others, but it makes you available for what God has reserved. It does not exempt you from responsibilities, but it summons you to carry even more. It is a mark of faithfulness, of mission, of purpose. You are part of this small but powerful group. You are the minority who decides to believe when many give up. You are the remnant that carries the weight of the promise, and heaven says to you today, you are 1%. We have come to the end of this message, but not to the end of what God is doing in your life. Today, you have walked a path of revelation. You understood that the trial was not ruin, but a forge. That the promise is not just a gift, but a legacy. That the enemy tried but did not win. That the moment is not tomorrow, but now. That abundance is not vanity, but responsibility. And that the seal of the 1% rests upon those who remained firm until the end. All of this forms a divine line, a continuous thread that leads your story, from pain to purpose, from waiting to inheritance, from battle to victory, from responsibility to legacy. You are under a prophetic summons, and this night is the mark of a new time. Now close your eyes wherever you are and join in this prayer. Lord, I place before you every process I have lived through. I recognize that they were not punishments, but preparation. Thank you because even when I didn't understand, you were molding me. Today, I receive with faith the promise that was entrusted to me. I declare that I will not live just for myself, but for your kingdom. I rebuke every voice of the enemy that tried to silence me, and I position myself to live God's now. May the abundance that comes into my hands be a channel of transformation for others. Mark me, Lord, as part of this faithful remnant, this 1% that does not retreat. Sealing this word, I make myself available, ready to carry the responsibility and the legacy that have been entrusted to me. In the name of Jesus, amen. Do not ignore this call. This is your night. Do not delay what heaven has already decreed. You were prepared, you were forged, you were set apart. And now the inheritance is before you. You are chosen. You are part of the 1%, and God's clock points exactly to now. If this word spoke to you, share your faith, like this video, leave your comment, and subscribe to the channel. This way, more people can be reached, and together we will continue to build this space of faith and revelation.